Good morning, folks. Welcome again to the Yorkshire EV Club channel YouTube. And today I have a gentleman called Andrew Roach on the interview couch. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm very well, thank you, and pleased to be here.
And likewise, yes. And whereabouts are you in the country then, Andrew?
So I am a Lancastrian by birth who moved over to Yorkshire when I was 18, and I've bounced around the county, Wakefield, Bradford, Huddersfield, Beverley, Hull, but for the last 10 years now I've been settled in Leeds, and yeah, I really like it.
Right, so you have been all about. Well, I am not going to question your credentials as a Lancastrian because I'm from Stoke-on-Trent, so I'm very much a plastic Yorkshireman myself.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good banter still goes on between the roses, definitely.
Absolutely, but I've got much in common with dyed-in-the-wool Yorkshireman, as I'm extremely tight, short arms and deep pockets. So
yeah, the old jokes are good.
So so just a little chat today. So you're currently an EV driver?
Yes, first EV coming up to a year now. I've been driving my first electric car, and yeah, love it.
Put us out of our misery. What EV are you currently driving?
So it's a Jaguar I-Pace in SE spec. So it's yeah.
So we have another I-Pace driver. I'm going to get lambasted by all the Tesla boys who want a bit of this club action YouTube. Absolutely. So okay.
Well, it was a real tough choice because I'd ordered the Jaguar, and then the Model 3 got released, and I expected it would have really long lead times and wouldn't be even an option. And then the lease company said, "Oh, I can get you a Model 3 if you wanted." So I had then 2 weeks of angst about deciding whether to switch between the Jag and the Model 3 Tesla. In the end, we stuck with the Jaguar, but it was a really tough choice in the end between the two cars. Very different, but yeah, interesting.
I think, as I said to Gary on Friday, and again at risk of the Tesla boys piling on me, the Jaguar is such a solidly well-built car, isn't it? And a beautiful lines.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it came down to there's some real plus points for Tesla. The charging infrastructure is much better. For long distance charging is better. The technology is better without a shadow of a doubt, and I think they really get the system over the air updates. And from a pure top trumps bragging right perspective, the performance in a straight line is really impressive. But things that I chose the Jag, I think it drives better, I think it looks better, and I have a 3-year-old boy, and the simple practicality of the boot opening on the Model 3, which is the smallest opening I've ever seen on a saloon car, just meant it just wasn't practical compared to the big booted hatch of the Jag.
So what made you go EV then?
Oh, I'm a staunch environmentalist, have been my entire life. Always liked cars. I used to have a previous rule, which was my new car always had to be more environmentally efficient than my last car. So I always had to think about trying to improve the efficiency of cars. And I've kind of tracked EVs for ages. I remember when the first G-Whizzes came out and the reviews on Top Gear. And I remember the first Tesla Roadster and just thinking it was an absolutely amazing car and wanted an electric car, but affordability was always the challenge. And 4 years ago, I think, when I last changed my car prior to this one, really looked long and hard trying to find an electric car that I could afford, that I liked as well. It's important. I like cars. I want a car that I like as well, and that was suitable practicality-wise. And the thing I wanted last time was a Model S, and I just couldn't. It was just too expensive. So we ended up not doing that. But then this time round, there was probably 3 or 4 options we could have gone for, and it's just nice to see the range increasing. So I always wanted one. And now I've got one, I am even more passionate about it. I just could never see myself going back to a petrol-powered car ever again.
It is funny, I got a 2012 Nissan Leaf back in 2015. And quite frankly, once you've driven an EV, that is it, you're hooked. And you talk about environmentalism briefly, and I just think, I didn't realise this at the time when I first got an EV. I just loved it, and they've opened up so many possibilities having that big static battery in a vehicle sat there in your drive, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting because I was I was reading something somewhere about this, the opportunity to take peak load off the electricity network by draining EVs batteries down at between 4 and 7 p.m. when people have come home from work, and then recharging the cars overnight as a way of trying to improve the environmental impact of our entire national grid as well. So I think they're just a fascinating technology that's really in its embryonic stages, and in 5-10 years' time, I think the world will be transformed in the way that people use transport and electric cars.
And it's interesting how quickly it's evolving, isn't it? I mean, as I say, I've only had an EV for 5 years, and the way the network's improving, and also the way charging standards are changing, and you just think, you know, it's just fascinating how quickly it's moving, and trying to keep up with it and trying to make the right decision. Like, do you buy a car with CCS, and then you have no option for V2G, and yet Nissan have dropped their latest, they've dropped CHAdeMO in their latest recent unveiling of the new car. And so what do you think about V2G on a large scale, and how far away do you think we are from that practically happening?
I don't think I would purchase a car based on it at the moment. I think it feels like it's something that you'll start to see occurring, but probably it's 2-3 years away from being something you would want to sort of make a decision based on. I think at the moment, though, I mean, I find I don't do a huge amount of mileage, and clearly in the current world I do far less mileage, but 98% of my journeys are done without needing to charge on the road. You can sort of it's interesting, you buy a new car and people aren't interested. You buy an electric car and everybody has the same sort of 4 or 5 questions when you get a car, like how far does it go, how do you charge it, and these questions. And the best example I use now, I always tell people, it's like a mobile phone. I charge my mobile phone every night, I unplug it at 100%, and the next day, 99 times out of 100, that phone will work all day and get me home until I go to bed. And it's the same with my electric car. I mean, fortunately, the Jag got a great range, probably get real world somewhere between 230 and 260, depending on whether and how you drive it. The number of days where I do more than that are very few and far between. And I always joke, which is, well, my bladder range is definitely shorter than my car range. So I'm going to stop somewhere. And I've been fortunate every time I've done a long journey, I've stopped at motorway services, put a fast charger on it, had a cup of tea, used the bathroom, and that's got me home. Because you only need to get home because, as I tell people, your house is a petrol station. So every time you get to your home, you just plug in and away you go. And now I've just finally got my smart meter installed. So I'm now moving on to a tariff that will make charging overnight even more economically attractive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Octopus Agile tariff, I've become a bit of an ambassador for that, really. It's
so Octopus I'm with, and I'd originally signed up for the Go tariff, which was the sort of cheap between midnight and 4. But I was just this week reading about Agile, and I am tempted to go for that because it looks a really quite interesting prospect.
If you are ever so slightly nerdy person,
which
I then yeah, you'll get a kick out of looking at the rates and charging up when you get paid or when it's very, very low indeed. And it is kind of addictive. I'm looking daily to see because I've got 2 EVs, so keeping them topped up. And the one's a 22 kilowatt Zoe, one's a 40, so they're both relatively low range cars.
Yeah,
the 40 is more than enough for my needs, but the 22, and just looking at those rates and the savings you can make just by setting a charge timer for an hour or so earlier or later, depending. It's just brilliant, the saving you can make with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, our other car currently is petrol, and that lease is up in October, and we've made a decision, which is our second car will go electric because we've had a year now of running one. And I think people have a mental block with range and what you think you need versus what you actually need. I think there's a kind of psychological barrier that people have to get over, which isn't real, but I think society probably needs to have a certain amount of range for the masses to want to transfer across, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my last car prior to my 40 kilowatt Zoe was a 30 kilowatt Leaf, but I've been all over the country in that 30 kilowatt Leaf.
Yeah.
And you just get used to having to stop a little bit more often than you might have done. And as you say, as we get older, our bladder range definitely decreases.
Yeah. Well, I've got the age bladder, and I've also got a 3-year-old son who isn't going to do 250 miles without stopping at some point. So I think particularly people who've got kids, then it doesn't change. You don't have to plan. You maybe choose where you stop. That's the only thing. It's planning your stops a little bit, not if, but just where.
And my wife suffers from a bad back, so I don't want her to be sat static for 200 miles before I stop, or 300 miles. You know, I want her to get out, stretch her legs, have a coffee, be comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the next thing. Researching what is the options for a little small sort of second car is quite interesting at the moment. So because it feels like that world's got really excited now with the Mini E's out, the new Fiat 500's coming out, the Honda E looks like a bonkersly cool car.
Yeah. There's so many. Even Skoda have got one, haven't you? Like I say, the little city car.
The Skoda. What is it? Me, Volkswagen Up, and Seat City Go. I can't remember, but basically those 3 of those are all
the same.
Same car, different badge, and they look pretty competitive as well. Really.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way I think of it in my household, and I know other people with 2 EVs do, is I think I've got one short range car and one long range car. The 22 kilowatt Zoe I tend to use for buzzing around town. If I've got a longer journey, then I'll tend to use the 14. It just makes sense. I don't need 2 cars that'll do 300 miles. Why would I?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so quite exciting to go to be a fully electric car household this year. Hopefully that's the plan.
Yeah, it's and it's, as I say, as V2G options come in, that gives you even more flexibility, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
of course, talking about environmentalism and what have you, the Zappi is a great option, isn't it, to charge your car from sunshine?
Yes. Yeah. We haven't done that yet, but I have looked. Our house doesn't face the right direction, particularly to get great solar power, unfortunately. But yeah, I think some of the cars now that can charge using solar panels on the car, aren't they? Now that's some of the tech that's coming along in the future, so that's going to be pretty cool.
And it makes sense, doesn't it? I just feel like us EV drivers should be all lobbying the government. For God's sake, why do you not have every single new build house have a few panels on? Imagine it would stop them having to do, at least a couple of power plants, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and and I think that's the thing. It's about incentivization, isn't it? Which is, I find I work in the water sector, and we ask house builders to put in rainwater harvesting systems and all their soakways and things rather than connecting to the system. But people don't. But some companies actually incentivize to say to developers, we will give you a discount if you do that. And I think sometimes that's where the government needs to get smarter, which is house builders are there to make a quick buck. They want to buy a house, build a house as quickly, as cheaply as possible and move it on. So I think we might think about how we fiscally incentivize that kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, but you would think, wouldn't you, that, as someone as an organisation that is selling the houses, it would be a great plus point to have, say, a whole estate that's all got solar panels that can also be interconnected with a battery network as well, and sell energy to one another cheaply for when one of them's got excess. It's just we've got all our power solutions. I think we've got the technology. It's just, as you say, getting the big boys to. I think if selling something as big as a house, it's very easy to factor in panels at new build stage, isn't it?
It absolutely is, but I think it comes down to it because the people that save the money are the house owners, not the house builders, and that's the problem, I think. So it's how do you make it attractive to the people that are selling and building the houses, and is it enough at the moment to give it a competitive edge over another house down the road? And it probably isn't at the moment. I think until people start to see the benefit. I think you need to almost. It's a bit like the grant for electric cars, isn't it? Which is. And the free parking that you get in Leeds, you get a permit, you can park your car for free if you've got a zero emission vehicle.
And I think Nottingham, can't you use bus lanes in Nottingham?
Yeah, so those kind of things are just enough to sort of get people interested, get people talking about something. And then I think as people understand it, then people will want to embrace that technology. But sometimes just being a great solution on its own right isn't enough to get the momentum, I don't think.
No, and I just think it's educating local councils and government and MPs as well, a lot of whom are, without being too disrespectful, uh, in their latter years may not well be up on new technology and exactly what it can provide in terms of value for residents and people under their care, as it were.
I mean, you find yourself, I think, having an electric car being a kind of an informal spokesperson for them, because everybody wants to talk to you about it when they realise what it is, and then they're interested in it. I think the number of people I think I've spoken to, are then actually probably, you sense they've changed their opinion of what an electric car is, and they've changed their opinion about, well, actually, maybe I will look at one going forward. And I know through colleagues at the moment, because of the change in the tax laws for electric cars, there's a huge change and influence in people now thinking my next car will be electric because the benefit in kind is changing. And actually working with our fleet department about, we're trying to move our vans, so actually a lot more of the utility vans in Yorkshire will start to be electric powered, and we're putting charging stations in at a lot of our offices and depots now to make it practical for people to have an electric vehicle for work as well as for sort of social and domestic use.
And there's a long-term cost saving there, isn't it? That just can't be ignored.
Well, it's the thing, is it? Because I think that's one of the things that we talk about. I talk about whole life costs. So yes, an electric car is more expensive list price than a petrol car or a diesel car. But when you take into account mileage costs, you take into account maintenance costs, replacement parts, etc., then actually it's not as expensive as people think, and actually, I think can become really quite competitive.
I always tell people I use my wife Zoe as an example. Very early Zoe, 2013. It's not particularly high mileage, but it's been eligible for MOT since I've had it. So the last 3 years I've had that. And through its last 3 MOTs, a car that's now 7 years old has got through every MOT with literally nothing done to it.
Yeah.
A 7-year-old car you'd expect to be paying for something, but it's literally 3 MOTs, just the cost of the MOT. Great advert for EVs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't touch one of the things I really like about electric cars is the one pedal driving, which was something I didn't anticipate and didn't really think about too much. But once you've got used to driving a car on one pedal and not using your brake and all the sort of efficiency and maintenance costs associated with it, it feels, when we get out of the car and have to press a brake pedal, it kind of just feels wrong now.
Yeah, that's a physical, but I know what you mean. Even the Zoe's not got the best regen, and it doesn't have any regen levels. It's just got the one level, and the regen works with the brakes in a different way than other EVs. But even mine, you take your foot off, and you get it, so you judge it to a fine art. You just tap your brake at the end, and obviously going down a hill, even the Zoe will give me, we've got a big hill in South Cave. You might be familiar with it if you were.
I do know South Cave. You used to live there, Bevel, as I said.
I'll get 5 miles out of that hill. No problem.
Yeah, you can. That gets get addictive, I think, actually. Managing your range and looking at how to get the most efficiency out of a battery is as addictive as the acceleration when, from a standing start, electric cars are very, very quick.
Oh, I'm a nerd and a gamer, so I am always trying to get that efficiency figure up. It is a competition with myself. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
So, talking about EVs and trips, what would be your dream EV road trip if someone said to you, right, I have 3 months off work, here's a budget, where would you go? Where would you travel in your I-Pace? What would be your first go-to destination?
Oh, good question. So I really like traveling. Me and my wife try and travel as much as we possibly can. But a good road trip probably would be just across Europe, without necessarily with a plan, but, drive down to get across the channel and then just go where the wind flows, really, where the wind takes you. But we did a camper vanning holiday last year in Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia. And actually, that was just a common garden camper van, but saw loads of EV charging points at lots of places. You do realise, I think Europe probably seems to be quite an easy place to have an EV, it feels like, from what I've seen briefly. So probably Eastern Europe, because I think I quite like the old Soviet bloc part of the world. I find it quite a fascinating geopolitical part of the world. So
a lot of history,
yeah. So probably around Europe, but without a plan. I think the idea of just go where you fancy on the day you wake up, I think, is a nice way to travel.
Well, we had a nice leisurely sort of 9-10 day trip planned for the North Coast 500. Going to take in all sorts of things. That was in early June. So
right.
Obviously that went by the wayside with lockdown, what have you. So that would have been my Zoe's first big test. And I'm sure it would have lived up to it admirably, but hey ho.
Yeah, no, we got. I mean, obviously the world is locked down, but we've got a trip up to Scotland in self-catering next month. So that's probably with a car full and a roof box. So that'll probably the biggest challenging drive we'll have done from a planning perspective. But quite geekily looking forward to trying out the Ionity 100 kilowatt charger. The 10-minute services on the M6. So.
It'd be interesting to see what that roof box does to your efficiency as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've never had a roof box. We bought one because we used to have an estate car prior to this, so the Jag was a little bit of a compromised boot space compared to, because nobody does an electric estate car at the moment, as far as I'm aware. You can get a few plug-in hybrids, but not genuine electric cars. So yeah, we need a roof box now with a toddler. So because he wants his bike and his scooter and all the stuff that needs to go in. So yeah, so we'll see what it does to the range. But I think if he deducts 10% off, we still get 200, 220 out of it. That'll be more than acceptable, I think.
Yeah. It's but yeah, we love Scotland. Me and the wife, we did Southwest Scotland last year, and it was just, I had one stretch that was like, it seemed to be 70 miles of virtual single track, and it was just beautiful. But it was like a roller coaster. It was up and down, so it was great for regen and what have you. It was just, and I looked at the charger distance, and it was kind of on the edge of my 30 kilowatt Leaf, and I said to Julie, I said, looking at this terrain, we'll have absolutely no problem. We'll massacre it, you know.
Yeah.
There's plenty of ups, but there's also plenty of downs, and I just thought, no problem.
Yeah. I've not run out of charge yet. I came close one day when I thought my wife had plugged the car in overnight and she hadn't, and I had 20 miles range at the start of the day to do an 18-mile journey to work. And after about 15 miles, that ratio changed and went the other way. So I got within 2 miles of the office and it came up battery level critical, please pull over. But I thought there's bound to be a little bit of a margin for error.
Factor in.
Yeah, so I managed to get the last 2 miles into the office where there was a charging point. So that's the closest I've come to running out so far.
I think they like to assume that we're all idiots, and they always give us a generous portion below what they say there is.
That's what I assume. Yeah, I don't like that made me slightly nervous, but I think if my wife was in the car, she'd probably get a bit more stressed about that.
Yeah. So what you say you're looking at a second car? What do you think you're going to go for?
I think the one we would really like is the Fiat 500, because we've had 3 convertibles in the past, and so we quite like having a car that you can take the roof comes off, and that's something that there isn't anything, I don't think, at the moment in the electric world that does that, or at least not that I'm aware of that's affordable. But the Fiat 500, which I think is due late this year, early next year, with a kind of cloth fold back roof. So that's probably the first favourite. And then second one, I think, just even though it makes, you look at the stats, why would you buy a Honda E? It's expensive, it's got a small battery, it's got a small range, but I just love the styling of it. I think
beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, because we've currently got a petrol Mini, so I don't think the Mini, whilst the Mini is, I think, a great car, and I think it'll do wonders for EV sales in the UK, because Mini's a really popular car.
Iconic brand.
And you look at the Mini E versus a Mini Cooper now, and it makes a really good sense, good decision to buy one. But I like something different, and I think the Honda, so Fiat 500 or the rather bonkers Honda E.
So what battery they've got planned for the 500? Because it's not much of a floor space, is it?
No, is it a 30? I think it's 33 or 37 kilowatts. I think. So,
sounds about right. Yeah, it's.
So I think they're quoting about 130-ish sort of WLTP range, which for a second car that does probably 5,000 miles a year is more than seasonal.
I mean, you could live with a 22 kilowatt battery for a second quite easily. I mean, Julie's old Zoe will do about 80 miles easily. More for I go steady, but that's more than enough for the little. She has a 2 mile journey to work and back, and on the way back, it's half of it's downhill. So it's that car. That's why I run round with. I leave mine on the drive, and at weekend we run that round because it really needs the mileage putting on it.
Yeah. I did look at the little smart cars. I used to have smart cars years ago. I had a couple of smart cars, and I like them, but they are quite. I can't remember what the battery's in that, but it's a pretty small battery in the smart car. There's nowhere to put a battery.
18 kilowatts or something, definitely.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So you'd have to charge it every single day to get to the office and back, and that just felt like it's too much of a compromise, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I'd definitely have a look at a 22 kilowatt Zoe, but
well, the Zoe's definitely on the list. That's the other. It's kind of the Zoe's a nice car, but it's very much just it's a bit like the Mini, isn't it? It's a normal car that just happens to be electric. Whereas I quite like the Honda E because it's a bit like the Jaguar. It kind of stands out. These days, I think you've got the choice, haven't you? You can either have an electric car that's just like a normal car that just happens to be electric, or there's some really quite cool cars that are designed to stand out a little bit and be a bit different, and the electric motor and the opportunities that presents the designs. Like the I-Pace, you couldn't do the I-Pace shape with a conventional powertrain in there. It just wouldn't work. And I quite like that about it.
But no, that Honda E is another level styling-wise. I know some people. I've heard some people say they don't like it, but for me, I just think something about that headlight configuration and the shape of it overall. I just think it's
kind of has a bit of a 70s vibe to it. I think it kind of looks like a sort of 70s, Japanese 70s car brought into the modern era. I think it just works really well. I think it's got a really small boot. I think that's the only thing. I want to see one in the flesh just to see how small the boot is. But it's got the advantage of having back doors, which the Mini and the Fiat don't have.
Yeah. What about the i3? Does that not appeal?
The BMW i3. Did look at it. It's just quite. I don't know. It felt quite expensive when I was looking at them. They were like about 37,000 for a new one, I think. So, but we did like one, and we did test drive one a couple of years back. But it was a very expensive second car, is what it felt like.
They are. There's quite a few second-hand good deals going out for the i.
Right. Okay.
They are kind of keen to sell off their stock, I think. So, I was looking at one in the week. It was 20k, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But second-hand, obviously, but it depends what you're going for. But having driven one of them, they were a very nice, sporty car. Very sporty.
Yeah. And the other one, giving consideration to sort of other end of spectrum which is the MG, is it ZE, ZSE, the sort of little
ZSEV,
mini SUV, because for the price of it, it's remarkably a lot of car and a lot of battery range for the money, really. Because I think you can pick them up by about £23,000.
They've just improved them, haven't they? They've just done a comfort update that the owners are generally raving about.
Right.
We have a member, a YouTuber guy called Kevin Chan, and he has a YouTube channel called KC Talks EV. He's got an MG, and he's done numerous videos. And I've actually been in his car, and it is very spacious. That panoramic glass sunroof, absolutely gorgeous. It's got all the tech. I don't think they're the most efficient car in the world, and no doubt the MG people will jump on me as well as the Tesla people now. But 44 kilowatt battery, good for about 140 miles. I know it's rated for more, but I like to be realist. But they're a big car. They're a big car for a second car, I'd say.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Whether we need something that big, but like the Jaguar's not particularly efficient. It's got a really big battery, which gives it its range, but it's not the most efficient of EVs in the world. But then it's a 2.2 ton SUV with a 4-wheel drive system. It's never going to be.
And as you say, with the toddler having that nice big boot, and it is a really big boot at the ZSEV as well.
Yeah.
I certainly think it's slightly bigger than the Leaf, and the Leaf's got a sort of well-known, quite a large boot.
Leafs are always surprised me about how big they are, because when they first came out, in my head they were kind of like a Clio sort of sized car, but they're actually much bigger, isn't it? It's much more like an Astra or a Ford
Yeah.
Focus type size car.
Yeah, they are sort of more golf size.
Yeah.
I think the shape of them makes them a little, well, the older Leaf anyway. The shape of them makes them a little bit misleading.
Yeah, deceptively large. I think a state agent.
I've got quite a narrow drive, and I've had 2 Leafs, and
Right.
now I've got a Zoe, and it's much easier to get the Zoe off the drive than it was my Leaf, because it really is narrow drive.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably about it, really. So,
Okay.
getting to know you, and yeah, I have to keep us posted on what's going on with your
Next choice.
second car.
Yeah, the whole COVID thing means you can't go out really and test drive things at the moment. Or that's the kind of. Because I think I'm on all. You know, you can put yourself on the list, can't you? So you get emailed straight away. So the Honda dealers now are saying, "Oh, we're getting a Honda E," and so you can actually physically go and see one. So that's the next thing to do really, is go look at a Honda E, and then the Fiat's a bit longer away, I think.
Yeah, keep us posted, and if you can make a Yorkshire EV Club meeting, we'd love to have you there.
Will do. Look forward to it.
Smashing. Thanks ever so much for your time today, and have a lovely day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.